Kingsbury, who just got fired at Texas Tech with a losing record. Yes, the same Cliff Kingsbury, who just last week was slated to be USC's offensive coordinator, but also the same Cliff Kingsbury who looks like Ryan Gosling. That's not important now. All right, CC, what was your reaction to this hire?
My initial reaction was I was surprised because I just have not seen in the record show over the last 15 years, going back to Butch Jones leaving Miami.
Butch Davis
leaving Miami, trying to come to Cleveland. And there have been disaster after disaster, college coach or college head coach, and making that transition. Now, in talking to people that I know and respect, and more importantly, the general manager who had a lot to do with hiring them, Steve Keim there in Arizona, he's like, Chris, you would like him. He's a man's man. He can call plays. Imagine this, because in the NFL, everyone's got the same resources for the most part. Imagine trying to go against Texas and all those big schools with the lack of firepower that he had at Texas Tech. Imagine the budget going against what they were spending compared to recruiting compared to Oklahoma. And I was like, wow, you make a very, very good point. And he said, I believe that he's a leader of men. He commands attention. And I believe his X's and O's are second to none. So to me, I had to start doing some research, start calling some people around. So there are going to be a lot of young coaches being hired. And their ability to be able to communicate, and with this new generation of players, their ability to be able to connect with them. I didn't think too much about that because I've always been by the theory, whoever the coach is, whatever style, the kids will always adapt to them. That's why Bill Belichick and guys like him can always be successful. But we're dealing with a different generation of young people, and I just believe what Steve Keim and some of these organizations are seeing, what Green Bay saw. Because we cannot think that this generation is going to learn and think the same way that we've seen the last decades of players learn. So I'm open to it because the people who I respect and have a high football IQ, and I have a high opinion of them, they have been telling me about Cliff Kingsbury and other people. So I'm not going to be naive not to listen to the people who I really, really respect.
All right, let me make the case for Cliff Kingsbury on the parts that Chris didn't touch on. He was a coach at the University of Houston when Case Keenum set every college football passing record there was. He then was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M when Johnny Manziel won the Heisman. He then was the head coach at Texas Tech.
And Johnny Manziel is significant because a lot of that success was predicated on going against Alabama,
yes,
an NFL style. So would it transfer if you had the quarterback?
It was in the SEC in real competition. It wasn't University of Houston against Conference USA and setting those types of records. Then he goes Texas Tech, briefly as Baker Mayfield, I would assume helps at least some in his development, and has Patrick Mahomes and helps in his development because he was raw. That is the case for Cliff Kingsbury. Another check mark in his favor in my eyes is I am so frustrated watching NFL football with some of the old guard coaching, with some of the, it's not about the rushing yards, it's about the attempts. Any new blood to me can be a positive. The case against him for me is a personal one, which is I have been in a position, and you know this, and I don't have to get into the details, where I took a job and I hadn't signed anything, but I took a job verbally, and the next day, the next morning, I got offered what I thought was my dream job. And it was everything, like if you would have asked me 72 hours prior, describe your dream job, that is what I was offered the next morning. And on that phone call, I said, I appreciate it. I'm flattered. I wish you'd have called me 18 hours ago, but I just said yes to somebody. And you guys, people laugh at me, whatever. Chris poke fun of me about this if they want. I hung up the phone and I cried because I felt like man, if I had just waited. But I had given someone my word. I was taking a job. And even though I hadn't signed a contract, I couldn't go back on it. I'm bothered that someone goes to Lynn Swann, goes to Helton, the head coach at USC, and gets a job, and 2 weeks later says, maybe there's a better one. I know that people know coaches move and leave, but you're supposed to give them at least a year. That's a part of the Kingsbury thing that, to me, he has to earn that part of your professional character back, because I don't want you to get engaged and then that weekend go hit on somebody new. Like, give it some time. And that part, to me, he knew NFL coaching jobs were coming open. If he knew this was his dream, he could have waited and not put USC in the position he put him in.
My question to you quickly before we move on is, how do you win over a locker room who knows what your resume is? You got a losing resume, for better or for worse. I understand there were circumstances, but how do those guys fight and believe and get on board with what you're selling, knowing the success or the lack of success you've had?
It's the same way that Dennis Green took over Minnesota after coaching at Northwestern. He wasn't a great success at Northwestern, but we understood, we respect the football. When you get in the room, you respect the personality, you respect the mission. Everything that he say is going to be very, very important from the beginning. And from what I hear, the people who have talked to him, they feel confident in moving forward. But what he's going to be judged on is offensively, can he be effective against NFL defenses? That's what gave Chip Kelly those 2 years. His teams, people don't remember, they won 10 games, they won 10 more games. But you realize the system off the field, it wasn't sustainable. The lack of management of clock time, it wasn't sustainable. Having all these undersized players, it wasn't sustainable. But his ability to be able to score points, that's what's going to give him credibility in that NFL locker room to be able to take over that organization.
And Steve Keim and the Arizona Cardinals know the #1 resource in their organization potentially is Josh Rosen. And they want to, they clearly have made the decision that our franchise is going to go as our young quarterback goes. So we're hiring a coach that we think has gotten the most out of every quarterback he's ever been around.
Right.
It's the other stuff that is, to me, a real question.
Kingsbury better call Larry Fitzgerald and get him to play another year.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would make his rookie season a lot easier having Fitzgerald in that locker room.
Or 2 or 3. Got to take a break. Coming up, Ezekiel Elliott is ready to make a Super Bowl run. You'll hear from him ahead on First Things First.
It'd take